Kujuki walked up to the gate of Yugrasha Academy. He was very worried about not looking weird or standing out, even though the place was full of newcomers. Suddenly, a cat's head appeared from his bag, ordering the guy to look at all these heroes around him. Kuju reminded him of his request not to climb out, but Felice asked him not to act like that because it was very boring here. The cat hid back but wondered why the young man was worried about what they would think of him every time. Was he one of those introverts? Kuju explained that it was in the real world, but Felice countered that it had only been 3 years. Nevertheless, the guy reminded him that all that time he had only interacted with a talking cat, and that was hardly going to help him connect with people. Suddenly, a girl called out to him, asking him not to run away, but Kuju didn't hear it, as he was busy dealing with Felice, who tried to get out again. He explained that he was still a regular cat, but the young man ordered him to just sit quietly. The girl cringed when she saw the cute fluffy cat in Kuju's arms, which took the guy by surprise. He finally noticed her, and therefore assumed she was one of the returnees as well. Felice noticed that they were caught pretty quickly, but the girl didn't hear it, as all her attention was on the cute cat's appearance. Finally, she came to her senses and confirmed that she was a returnee and introduced herself as Imara Kamari. She reached into her pocket for the invitation, but didn't find it there, so she restlessly rummaged through all the places she could put the envelope, which seemed a little strange to Kuju. Finally, the document was found, and after familiarizing himself with it, the guy concluded that he had one. Suddenly, the bells rang, signifying the imminent start of the entrance ceremony. Amari urged her new acquaintance to go inside, but the latter was attracted by the laughter of the cat, who found the girl very interesting. In any case, Kuju asked Felice to be on his guard, because if the others found out who he really was, it would be the end of them both. But the cat already knew that. The man at the podium explained that this school was an educational institution, created by the goddess and the Japanese state, a bridge between her and humans, so to speak. Kuju pointed out to his feline companion that the speaker was the prime minister himself, but Felice wasn't very impressed. He didn't even remember the man. The young man concluded that this academy was a completely different level, but Felice asked him not to sit with a stupid face, but to look around. Following the cat's advice, Kuju noticed that the other newcomers didn't treat this ceremony with any trepidation. Some even managed to play on their phones. The minister went on to say that all those gathered here are heroes who have saved many worlds and have returned to the academy. He said that the government of the country was very proud of them. He was laughed at the impertinent jerks around him. He was sure that the government was just a stone in the road for them, because any of these newcomers could bring even the king to his knees. No one even listens to this minister. Suddenly, a girl came up on the stage and, apologizing to the speaker, asked if he could end his beautiful speech at this point. The minister laughed awkwardly and agreed with her, announcing that in that case he had already finished. The girl introduced herself as Manao Kuzuha and stated that it was a pleasure to meet everyone. She announced that she was the executive director of the institution and could tell everything about the academy. Though she noticed that the time of the big shots had passed, Minayo stated that this is a quarantine for everyone gathered here. Everyone has their own power to save the whole world. Feeling threatened, they turn into a real atomic bomb. The girl pointed out that all the newcomers, guys or girls, have this power in the very middle of puberty. So if someone escapes or something else happens, everyone could be in trouble. As a sensible country, the government just can't let the heroes scatter, but no one is going to lock up the newcomers either. Minayo announced that there are many gods in the academy, so it's possible to go back to the usual life that everyone still remembers. She expressed her belief that many of the boys would not agree to part with the powers they had gained, so she announced that in that case, the academy wanted to offer them a deal. Minayo cautioned that it wasn't some kind of scientific experiment or anything like that, but suggested that the demonstration on the screen would be much clearer than words. One of the newcomers resented why it was taking so long and asked to hurry up, but Minayo asked for patience. Lastly, she announced that she had something she wanted to show them, and then snapped her fingers. Suddenly, holes began to appear in the ceiling, from which demons fell inside. Phyllis laughed. Finally, he had waited for something interesting. The members of the government began to scatter in panic, and Kuju decided that it was urgent to get everyone out. The other students had already bared their weapons and lined up, waiting for the monsters to come closer. Soon, a battle ensued, resulting in the defeat of all the monsters. Seeing the corpses, Kuju marveled at the strength of the returning heroes. She praised the newcomers for their activity, and one of the heroes realized that it was a test, but the girl explained that she just wanted to cheer them up. She was sure that they were having a lot of fun right now, which caused bewilderment on their faces. Mineo explained that now the newcomers were using their abilities for the first time in a long time and expressed that they enjoyed it. This was the price the academy was offering. The principal asked if the heroes wanted to save another world. She explained that this world was just an offshoot of the big tree. In fact, there are a whole bunch of other dimensions, but their main problem is that they are filled with monsters. Minao wants the heroes to get rid of them. The girl suggested that some students might say that the problems of the other worlds don't concern them. She explained that once upon a time, there was a world that was destroyed by a demon king. He was evil and didn't like other worlds, but when he was noticed by the goddess, the king had already destroyed thousands of spaces and the remaining ones wished to be sealed. The abandoned world of the demon king was what they called it. In any case, Minao advised to pluck the buds before they grew. After all, that was what the Hero Dispatch Company was for. At that, the director announced the end of her speech and warned that next would be the ability measurement. Suddenly, Minao pulled out a piece of paper that she had almost forgotten about and read out the names of Amari Komari, Ange Rikudo, Kibajin, and Kuju K. The people who were named were to follow her, while the rest were told to listen to the commands of the staff's instructions. Felice laughed, anticipating what would happen next. Kuju countered that nothing much should happen. After all, they had only just entered, though he was sure that it was still true that something was happening here. Upon reaching Hall B, Minao announced that the return was an exam, much to the surprise of those gathered. The girl showed off her tattoo, explaining that it was a crest of salvation. Such a mark is given out by the goddess as proof of the salvation of the world. She wondered if anyone had one, though she already knew the answer. In that case, Minao explained that they had not been registered as purifiers, which meant they had returned without defeating the Demon King. Meaning they had only fought themselves, the girl concluded that they had failed. Now those who were not honored to receive the crest were the fallen heroes, a bunch of losers. However, if one tried hard enough, they could regain their status. Minao wished them luck not to die. She had already turned around and wanted to go to the exit, but suddenly a big guy came out of the crowd and shouted to the director to stop. The title of fallen hero didn't suit him at all. The guy even thought that Minao was mocking him. She remembered that his name was Kashima Takaru and praised him for being active, but suggested that perhaps the energy should have been focused on defeating the Demon King. This infuriated Kashima even more. He started to step towards the principal, but suddenly stopped due to being tugged on his shoulder. Amari asked the guy not to fight, but he pushed her away with such force that the girl fell to the ground. Kuju immediately ran up to her, wondering how her acquaintance was feeling, but it seemed to the big guy that the young man had a complaint as well. Kuju argued that he did not, but suggested that they do without violence. Suddenly, Kashima shouted for the young man to shut up in a rag, which had a stunning effect. Kashima questioned if the principal was sure he was as fallen hero as the jerks behind his back. He revealed that he'd been to the world of Stage V, but he wasn't a cleaner. He'd just been caught off guard. The big guy said he wouldn't cede his power to anyone, but promised he could destroy everyone here. After these words, a magic circle appeared behind his back, and huge tongues of fire began to burst out of his hands. Kuju immediately realized that it was hellfire magic, but was puzzled how it could be used in this place. Minao pretended to be surprised by the big flames of the overly active guy, but still asked for it to stop. Kashima ignored the request and promised that the girl would burn in hell now. Kuju only had time to put his hand out before a blade shone in front of the big guy's throat. The sword wielder said that such behavior was against the rules, so Kashima would lose points, but Minao reminded him that he didn't have any points yet and told Riai that it wasn't time yet. The girl tucked her weapon into her scabbard, noting that the headmistress was being too kind. Minao then turned to Takaru, again praising him for always keeping such power at the ready and being able to use his abilities at a moment's notice, but stated that it should have all been used to save the world, not intimidate. Lastly, Minao declared that everyone in this room were fallen heroes and no excuses were needed. She hoped the wards understood and asked them to humor her tomorrow. Kuju thought about the above once more, realizing his new status as a fallen hero, the one who couldn't defeat the Demon King. Minao noted the timing of Ria's appearance, calling her her savior. The girl was sure that the headmaster would have been able to protect herself, but she still asked her not to put her life in danger next time, even though Minao assured her that the guy wouldn't have done anything anyway. Speaking of power, Rai admitted that she was curious about something. The moment the magic circle was destroyed, the girl felt something strange. It was as if Takeru Uju's technique had been interrupted and the attack was as if all the gunpowder had been extracted, but Riai couldn't figure out who was capable of such a thing except for her and Minao. The girl stated that the headmaster had seen everything with her own eyes, which meant that some of the newcomers had similar abilities. Minao wondered if it was possible to hide an ability that allowed her to see other people's. In any case, she explained that she would only be happy if someone strong came to the academy, because at least they would be an ally. In the meantime, Kuju had already reached the Narcissus dormitory, finding his 107th room, which, by the way, turned out to be quite nice, although, of course, compared to the hero's dwelling, it was nothing. Phyllis was finally able to get out of the cramped bag, immediately noting that it was too open. Kuju couldn't help but agree with the cat, recognizing that the two of them might have noticed that Kashima's magic circle was out of commission. The young man suggested that they shouldn't have been in such a hurry. Felice stated that the boy needed to study for now anyway, mocking his new title of fallen hero. Kuju admitted that he was sorry he'd had to drag the cat here, because it was like being at his enemy's house. He didn't want that. The guy promised that if Felice came back, he could live peacefully, but the cat was in no hurry to believe. He increased the lad's anxiety with his speculations about how horrible death could be if they were discovered, but expressed confidence that it would not come to that, for Kuju would protect him. Hearing this, the boy awkwardly confirmed that he would do so. Finally, Felice waited for a real man's answer, because up to this point, Kuju seemed like a little boy. Suddenly, the young man felt something strange, and turning around, he was very frightened that Felice had found her real appearance and for some reason was naked. Kuju asked where her clothes had gone, but her companion assumed that he knew. Felice explained that she had not fully recovered yet, so she was getting used to her legs. It was unusual to return to her former form. She also explained that she couldn't use magic while getting a new form, and it was a temporary effect. She wondered why Kuju was so quiet and asked if he wanted to thank her, but the young man just threw his clothes at her. She couldn't understand why this embarrassed him so much and offered to tell him, but Kuju objected that he shouldn't. As she threw her shirt back on, Felice admitted that she was overcome with strange feelings. She was grateful, because a life that should not be on this earth could now shine with new colors. That's why she asked her boyfriend not to worry, even if it seemed that she was uncomfortable here. Felice admitted that if she wanted to eat Kuja, she would start with his head, and then wondered if he, the abandoned demon queen, was so scary. The young man laughed, for the situation reminded him of the good old days. Felice reminded him that during their first meeting, he had been lying in that world in the eternal twilight. Kuju himself remembered that moment very well. In real time, 3 years had passed, but it felt like 30,000. He had fallen into the desert world where he had met her, and then they had fought. The girl held out her hand, offering to kill her. Kuju turned around, wondering who was in front of him and where he was. The queen felt bad for embarrassing the young man who didn't even know what this place was. She helped him to his feet and offered to take a walk and talk for a while and see the world. Kuju questioned who she was, so the girl introduced herself as Ferielis Fionishurg, but asked to just call herself Felice. Kuju assumed it was some sort of other world, honoring her for her ingenuity. Felice confirmed that this world was indeed different from the one from which Kuju himself had come. She explained that the goddesses had given this place the rather eerie name of Abandoned World, which made sense, since everything had come to an end here, leaving only this endless wasteland. Kuju asked why it had ended so sadly, and Felice explained that it was because she was the demon queen, the one who had destroyed everything in the world, people, beasts, and even monsters. In that case, Kuju wondered why someone like her would want someone like him. She recalled her very first requests: murder. Felice admitted that she would love to do it herself, but due to the limitations of her roots, she can't. The young man still didn't understand anything, so the queen snapped her fingers, causing some sort of badge to appear on the chest of both of them. Felice explained that it was the soul, or to be more precise, the spiritual core. In a sense, it was the root that determined the existence of a living being. You could say that her own soul was created to be a demon queen, which imposes certain inhibitions. The inability to commit suicide is one of them. That was why Felice had asked for help. Kuju objected that he couldn't fight at all, but the queen asked not to worry, as she would personally raise him to a level where he could kill her. Finally, they arrived. The guy wondered why they were deadlocked, but Felice pulled out a key, inserted it into the keyhole, and the door opened. The queen invited the new acquaintance into her castle. The room inside was littered with gold coins, special equipment and weapons, and chests. The girl explained that the treasures of all 3,000 worlds she had destroyed were gathered here. Literally anything could be found in this Mantisarium hall. Felice stated that she would now use it all to train Kuja until he was strong enough to kill her. To start, the queen asked to take a dew acceleration ring, an evil eye necklace, and to drink 1 elixir. The girl laughed that its taste was so nasty that even someone who can't die almost died after drinking some. Kuju looked around, marveling at how huge this hall was and how many treasures it contained. Suddenly, his attention was caught by a sword that looked somehow simple compared to these treasures. The young man was about to take it, but Felice immediately appeared nearby and stopped the curious guest. The queen explained that it was not just a sword, but an ancient Calamity Levankan ruler, a living demonic blade. It is a true crystallized evil that devours the soul. Even she herself had only used this weapon 3 times, and a simple touch from someone like Kiju would kill it instantly. She laughed, asking for patience. After all, he would still be able to hold it after about 300,000 years. Kiju couldn't believe his ears. 300,000 years. However, Felice explained that even time itself was dead in this world, so 10,000 years here equaled about 1 year in the human world. The girl promised that she would train Kuja to the fullest, and it didn't matter until when. She warned that even if he died, she would revive him, and if he went crazy, bring him back to his senses. So there was nothing to worry about. but that didn't sound as good as she would have liked for the young man. Anyway, even though Felice didn't have much time, she realized that Kuju might be tired today, so she offered him to rest and to have a party in honor of the new guest in the evening. Thus began his new life in the abandoned world. Kuju kept wondering what harsh trials awaited him, but it turned out that all his worries were in vain. The first task was to walk along the white line without deviating. Then he had to eat only with his left hand, which was quite difficult for him. And lastly, to hold objects without using his little finger, which also turned out to be more difficult than at first glance. All of this was a slight deviation from the usual routine, because according to Felice, people don't actually control their bodies the way they want to. So to begin with, Kuju should strengthen himself to give 100 of his will back to his body. The queen warned that she was going to see how much the student had learned the lesson. After 50 years, Kuju's body began to move exactly as he had envisioned, and gradually he was able to move on to heavier exercise, such as running and stretching. After 100 years, the body was trained, but that was not the goal. The goal was to learn how to control it properly. After 1,000 years, when the trained body had reached a certain degree, Felice decided it was time to practice magic. It was very difficult to develop the strength needed to do this, so it took another 10,000 years to learn how to properly handle magic. After 20,000 years, Kuju was finally able to fight using both cold weapons and spells. He spent entire days slaying demons created by the queen. Day by day, the trials grew more tedious, but there was no more entertainment in this desolate world. The only source of amusement was talking to Felice. Kuju collapsed on the ground, breathing a sigh of relief after another fight with a mechanical monster. Suddenly, Felice ran up to him, just begging him to tell more stories from this human manga tonight. She confessed that she really liked Bucky that Kuju had told about last night. In that case, the young man promised to tell about outstanding beasts next time. Felice remembered that it was a story about a school full of beasts that the boy had told about a few days ago. The queen couldn't wait to finally hear the story. Felice really wanted to hear Kuju's stories about school, about home, about her favorite manga. Simple stories of an equally ordinary life without any drama. Even such boring stories, she listened with admiration. But she especially liked the stories about the black cat that the young man had once adopted from his home. Kuju said that this cat never listened to him. It behaved like a queen, taking care for granted. The pet was unsociable and often made a mess, but even so, Kuju considered her part of his family. This cat seemed wonderful to Felice. She assumed that this sweet creature would always be by her master's side. Suddenly, she noticed that the young man was looking at her with a strange look, but Kuju explained that the queen just looked like this cat. Felice questioned what he meant, and even thought that the guy was starting to think she was a member of the family, but Kuju awkwardly tried to explain that a queen is just as majestic. This offended Felice somewhat, so she stated that it was natural considering she was the queen, and he was a fool. Both of them turned away from each other. Kuju only now realized that it was strange to ask such things, but he suddenly turned his attention to the corner near where the skulls were lying. He remembered Felice's confession that she had destroyed every living thing in this world. Humans, beasts, and even monsters. Yet the one sitting in front of him now looked like an ordinary girl. Kuju inquired why she destroyed all these worlds. At first, she didn't understand the question, but she quickly came to her senses, for the answer itself was simple enough. She was created for just that, a demon queen destroying worlds. She assumed she looked like a failure in the young man's eyes, a failure that should never have occurred, but by the time Felice reached self-awareness, everything had already been destroyed. In that case, Kuju said that it wasn't her fault. It was the fault of the one who had created her. But the girl found that funny. It surprised her that, even after seeing all those corpses, the young man really thought she was innocent. He then suggested that she wanted to die to atone for her sins, but Felice countered that she was still a demon queen. Despite her self-awareness, her nature remained the same, so she explained that she didn't care about people's pain as much as her joy. Kuju objected that she was lying, but Felice assumed he thought so because of his kindness. She put the bottle on the table and said that she herself could not say for sure whether she was lying or telling the truth. The only thing that was clear to her for certain was that she was very tired of all this endless imprisonment. Lastly, Felice advised Kuju to get a good night's rest, as tomorrow he would have a real combat training. He gave her a glance, wondering why he couldn't utter a single word. In any case, he didn't know what exactly to say, because he didn't know how long Felice had spent alone in this wasteland. He was sure that staying silent was the best solution, but one thing still made him wonder. Kuju wondered if the queen would be able to start the normal human life she so admired listening to the stories. If it was possible to free Felice from the fate of the destroyer of worlds, would she have been able to just live with her favorite cat, read her favorite manga, and drink her favorite beverage? He wondered if there was a way to avoid killing Felice and be with her. It's been about 30,000 years. Finally, the time had come. Kuju questioned if they really should do this. He suggested they walk and talk for a while first, for Felice explained that she hadn't fully released control of her root. Her destructive energy as a demon queen still bound her soul. However, this is a temporary effect. She won't be able to last long and will soon start destroying everything again. And of course, Kuju will be under attack as well. In that case, the young man asked what if he was okay with this outcome of events. His kindness made Felice chuckle again, but she countered that she couldn't let him do that. There was no reason to doubt. For the sake of peace and humanity, the results of the training must be demonstrated and the evil demon must be done away with. Suddenly, she wondered if Kuju had developed feelings for the demon. The young man confirmed her hunch, but Felice said that, of course, those 30,000 years they'd spent together had been the happiest time for her. Nevertheless, anyone else in his place would have been only too happy to kill her. The girl explained that she had used a completely random summoning spell. Kuju himself had accidentally endured all that training and had also accidentally spent all that time together with the demon queen. Felice thanked the guy for everything and admitted that she was glad that Kuju would be the one to kill her. The queen spread her wings and prepared for battle. The young man also bared his blade and ran forward. The girl greeted the new hero and then ordered him to come up and kill her. Kuju noticed that the girl's eyes had changed. Now he could definitely feel the destructive power of the demon queen that Felice was talking about. The demon grabbed the guy's face and sealed him into the ground. It was no longer the Felice he knew. A warm smile shone on the face of the same Felice. The opponent tried to finish the guy off, but he summoned a powerful pillar that burst out of the ground and threw the demon back up. He remembered how that Felice taught him swordsmanship and combat magic, defense and recovery magic, taught him all that only to be killed later. But Kuju wants her to live, because even despite all the circumstances, she gave something the young man had never had in his life. Happy time spent with someone. Finally, the former friends stood face to face. Kuju recalled that he had done everything Felice had told him to do, had obeyed for 30,000 years to fulfill her wish, so now he asked to listen to him for once. The demon queen prepared a spell and Kuju raised her blade upwards. Finally, the opponents collided with each other, creating an explosion of incredible power. When the dust cleared, Felice lay in the very center of the funnel, and the young man sat on top of her, bringing his sword over her throat. The queen thanked her friend for a good job, and then asked him to finish her off, promising that in that case the contract that sent Kuja here would disappear and he could return to his world. The guy had already prepared to strike, but suddenly Felice apologized for dragging him into all this. Kuju threw away his sword and wondered what the hell she was apologizing for. The guy yelled for Felice to cut the crap and get on with her life if she was truly sorry. The girl was surprised that the young man wished her life despite the fact that she had destroyed 3,000 worlds and taken countless lives. Kuju objected that it wasn't her fault. He hoped that there was some way to separate the girl and the demon, but Felice explained that if something like that existed, she would have taken that chance long ago. However, it couldn't be done even with Levankin's help. Suddenly, Kuju stood up, informing the girl that it couldn't be done for her. She queried what he was going to do, but the young man stated that he would do it himself. He promised to break the chains that bound Felice's root and separate her essence from the demon queen. He was going to separate the alter ego from the real soul. Kuju began to create a magic circle while Felice tried to stop him, explaining that he wasn't ready yet. Even she, the destroyer of worlds, couldn't make it work. She warned that if he failed, Kuju's soul would disappear. However, he countered that he was able to overpower the destroyer of worlds. Besides, in the human world, demons give half of the destroyed world to an ally. That is why the past and future of Felice, all her sins, Kuju demanded to give him half of her soul. With these words, the young man summoned the demonic sword Levankin. Suddenly, Kuju felt the weapon take away his magic and life energy. A figure appeared in front of him, encircling this very blade, seemingly Kuju's evil doppelganger, who began to convince him that it wouldn't work, as it was still impossible for his level. It's too early, you need to level up first. Someday for sure. The ghost reminded him that these were the excuses Kuju always used to give up. That was why the young man's life was so boring, devoid of drama. The ghost persuaded him to do the usual thing. Give up, Kuju agreed that he had always acted this way, but only because he had nothing to lose. This time was different. He shouted that he would never back down, and with those words he headed for the sword, ordering Levankin to obey. The blade ended up in Kuju's hands, and he found himself in front of the soul of Felice, who sat in the very center of it, surrounded by chains. It struck the young man that for a long time the girl had handled it herself, but now asked permission to help. Kuju swung and brought his sword down on the chains with all his might. Someone's gentle voice accused Kuju of being reckless. When he woke up, he found only the cat sitting on his chest. He couldn't believe it was Felice, but there couldn't be another living soul in this wasteland. The kitty was certainly cute, but Kuju couldn't understand why Felice had become like. The girl was surprised that he still didn't understand anything, so she explained that Kuju himself had done it. The thing was that Levankin had shredded her power to pieces. Now Felice wasn't even able to maintain human form. She explained that she had lost everything. Her power, her shackles, her destiny as queen. That was why she felt so light now. In that case, Kuju assumed that he had succeeded, but Felice asked him not to be conceited because he was only halfway to his goal. Besides, if she didn't help, not only the two of them, but the whole world would disappear. The young man apologized for his recklessness, but Felice asked him not to blame himself, because in any case, if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't be here. The cat praised the guy for his work and thanked him for everything. However, now Felice's hands were tied. Now that she was free from the shackles, there was nothing more to do in this world. In that case, Kuju offered to go with him to the human world. He promised to show his friend a normal life. Of course, he was willing to do so if Felice herself wanted to. She laughed at such a modest invitation, considering that Kuju had shouted give half of yourself before doing so. But naturally, she agreed. Besides, she couldn't wait to see how the manga would end. In the end, Kuju returned to Japan, which he was incredibly happy about. Felice remarked that they had been very lucky to hitch a ride on the goddess's transfer gate. Otherwise, they would have had to create their own. The young man asked how his friend was doing in Japan, and where she would like to visit first. Suddenly, several strangers in suits and mysterious masks in the manner of plague doctors appeared out of nowhere and asked Kuju for a moment of attention. They already knew that he had returned from another world, and so they handed over a summons from Yggdrasil State Academy. To clarify the details, the recipient was asked to read the letter. The space opened again. But before disappearing again, the man warned that the young man had no right to ignore the summons. Felice suggested that it was a bit early to enjoy a normal life after all. That was how Kuju ended up at the academy. Lying in bed, he couldn't believe that he had been sent an invitation from the hero's lair because there was no way this could have happened. He apologized for not being able to keep his promise and show his friend a normal life, but Felice said it was even more interesting that way. In that case, the cat wondered what Kuju was going to do now. He did not understand what was meant. So Felice explained that with his power, which surpasses even the power of the Destroyer of Worlds, he could subdue this school, take over the world, and in general, do whatever he wanted. Kuju objected that he was not interested in any of the above. Besides, he reminded that Felice had seen with her own eyes what having so much power led to. In addition, the young man explained that if he started to stand out, his unusual pet could be exposed, and he really wanted to avoid that outcome. He just wanted to live his life as peacefully as possible. Felice explained that power could be right and wrong. It was the purpose for which you used it that mattered. She admitted that she might have made a mistake, but she was sure that Kuju wasn't like that. She suggested that her student should be more confident, but he realized that himself. The goddess watching the academy's entrance ceremony was excited by the two strong newcomers who showed incredible strength. She couldn't wait to see what the others would be able to demonstrate. Lala would be looking after the students now, but the goddess still couldn't wait for tomorrow. The first night at Yggdrasil Academy has come to an end. On the second school day, classes would finally begin. Kuju wondered what kind of lessons the academy would have for the heroes, though in any case, for him being in the company of the Demon Queen, it would all be quite problematic. But the main problem wasn't even that. Felice wondered what the guy there had already been muttering to himself for several minutes. In response, Kuju simply showed a book on the secrets of communication. Her friend wondered why the young man needed this nonsense, but he explained that it takes friends to blend in with the crowd. In addition, he reminded her that the Demon Queen was the only one he had been communicating with for the past 30,000 years. For that reason, communication skills need to be updated. Felice wondered if communicating with her was boring, but unexpectedly, Kuju confirmed that it was. He recalled the Queen's consistently bad behavior all this time. She teased him, or tried to get a minor drunk, or tested her magic on him. Felice awkwardly agreed that perhaps such a woman really existed somewhere else in the world. Finally, they reached the desired classroom. Kuju again asked his companion to be quiet, and if she needed anything, to ask for it through telepathy. Hearing an affirmative reply, Kuju rushed inside, wishing good morning, but the room was empty. It wasn't surprising since it was only 7 on the clock and classes started at 8 o'clock. Suddenly, someone's voice announced that the guy was a little early. However, Lala had come early. Considering the place was empty, Kuju asked again, but there was no response. He decided to carefully walk along the classroom. He noticed a glow and a halo behind the teacher's desk. Kuju walked closer, and suddenly a goddess popped up. Wondering what he was staring at, the young man assumed she was lost. But the girl shouted that everyone was just saying that because Lala was small. Everyone looked down on her and treated her like a child. She objected that if she had been lost, she would have cried and wondered why no one else could think of it. Kuju didn't understand what was wrong with this mad woman, but nevertheless admitted fault and apologized. The girl introduced herself as the goddess Lala, a very precious being. The guy was surprised and asked if she was really a goddess. which was taken by Lala as an act of disbelief. She said she would make an exception and show him what she could do. Lala raised her hand in the air, flew upstairs with great difficulty and plopped tiredly on the pulpit. Kuju wondered if that was it, but Lala asked for a break. The young man asked Felice if it was true that this Lala was a goddess. Although her power was rather weak, the companion informed him that the goddess in front of him was without a doubt a goddess. Lala explained that she was just not feeling well today. Kuju apologized again, explaining that he had simply never seen a goddess before, much to his companion's surprise. Felice called her friend an idiot, explaining that heroes were usually the ones who were summoned. She ordered the young man to fool the interlocutor. In that case, the guy stated that he had never seen such a young and talented goddess. That's what he really meant. The girl thought it was suspicious. She jumped up from the table, sure that the newcomer was hiding something. She warned that Lala could not be fooled, for Lala was very smart. The goddess seemed particularly suspicious of the young man's bag. She demanded to see the contents and tried to take the item away. Kuju ordered Felice to behave like a cat. She didn't understand why she would do that, but it was too late. The bag opened and Layla saw only a cute animal inside, which she immediately grabbed in her arms, accusing the young man of not having to hide the fluffy thing from Lala. Kuju was glad they had managed to fool the goddess, but the classroom door swung open, and students poured inside. The boy looked around, roughly analyzing his new classmates. In general, he was surprised that they had obediently come to school, for judging by the mood on the first day, Kuju might well have been the only one to attend class. He speculated that the principal's speech yesterday might have caused such an effect. He asked Lala if she was a teacher, since no one had started the lecture. The goddess noticed that the boy had a good eye, but explained that her task was more important than that of a teacher. She was a supervisor. In that case, Kuju was about to ask who their teacher was today, but then the principal entered the classroom and all questions fell away. Minao wondered why the students were silent, as they could have greeted their teacher. One of the students explained that no one had expected their mentor to be their age. Minao laughed at the fact that the students really expected to see an ordinary school teacher, because she didn't understand what an adult could teach children like them. The girl pointed out that everyone here were former heroes and all had abilities, so no normal adult would be able to take care of students like these, though it bothered her a bit that some of the students considered themselves equal to the principal. In any case, Mineo offered to start the lesson. Of course she wanted to say something, but she didn't know anything about her mentees. That's why she started by asking the students to demonstrate what they could do. Suddenly, the floor began to separate. Kuju immediately realized it was spatial magic. Lastly, Minao gave advice like an older comrade. One should take care of their lives. Suddenly, the students were in some clearing, and the sky looked like its torn parts had been hastily stitched up. Felice was impressed that this Mineo could not only create such a huge space, but also maintain it. Now Kuju understood why the mentor was surprised by the comparison to the students. One of the female classmates screamed in horror as she noticed the monsters approaching. Mineo announced that since her pets had been handled so easily last time, she had brought the most adorable ones today. She was sure the monsters would seem cute to the students, but Kuju objected that one of the principal's most questionable hobbies. In that case, Minao wished him luck and advised him to at least try not to die. Now it came to the young man that they were not going to be taught from the beginning, at least not in the traditional ways. Felice asked her friend to be careful, but most importantly to watch himself. Kuju began to warm up and promised to take care of it. The young man noticed that his body had become a bit sluggish lately. After all, not much time had passed since Kuju's battle with the Demon Queen, who has to destroy worlds, so a duel with monsters could be a pretty good warm-up. Looking around, Kuju noticed that everyone else had already started fighting. His own opponent, after 30,000 years of training with Felice, he was sure that this monster wouldn't pose much of a problem. But that wasn't what worried the young man the most. He and the Demon Queen shouldn't stand out for anything. If defeated too quickly, it would attract the interest of the other students and questions would begin. If one avoided the battle, it would still interest the other students and questions would start. In other words, one must win with restraint. Kuju rushed forward, and then in a deft leap, he avoided the monster's huge paw, which almost collapsed on him with its entire weight. The young man used restrained flame magic that struck the monster, but the latter had the ability of fire breath, so he counterattacked. To avoid the counter throw, Kuju created a protective dome. He thought that everything was going fine, considering that his classmates recognized the needle dragon that possessed an S rank. However, they thought the guy was doing pretty well, so the problem was fixed pretty quickly. Suddenly, one girl asked her friend to take a closer look. Following the advice, she concluded that it was a female. The girl remembered that female needle dragons were considered the weakest demons. Her friends wondered what kind of self-respecting hero would even agree to such a fight. Kuju didn't expect such an outcome, so he decided to change his tactics. He hid his sword and waiting for the dragon to come closer. struck with his fist with such force that the monster's head was simply ripped off. The girls had to admit that it was really cool. Kuju had to use all his acting skills and complained that he had been messing with this demon for too long, so now he decided to be more serious. However, the problems didn't end there. One of his classmates noticed that male needle dragons had even shorter horns, so he pointed out to the others that it was a male. In that case, the girls couldn't believe that this kid had killed NS-rank monster with a single blow. They questioned whether he was definitely a fallen. Kuju used his acting skills again and tearfully grabbed his hand so that all the witnesses thought he just wanted to appear cool. The young man was convinced that school life can sometimes be difficult. Suddenly, a huge spear surrounded by a vortex of fire loomed ahead. Kuju assumed it was the spirit of eternal fire, a werewolf pseudo-do. The young man didn't understand what it was doing here, for unlike other demons, it was an artificial life form created with magic. He wondered if the headmistress had planned this as well. Suddenly, the sphere turned into a huge dragon, so the others assumed it was the final boss. All of its heads created fireballs, which then merged into one large one. Suddenly, the dragon threw this ball at the students, who started shouting for everyone to deploy defense magic. Even Lala was startled by the massive explosion below. She asked the principal if it shouldn't all be stopped, but Minya was sleeping a peaceful sleep. Kuju wondered why the goddesses weren't stopping this monstrosity. After all, there was no point in testing if the students were going to be burned to the ground. The young man looked around to understand the condition of his comrades who could barely stand up after this deadly attack. Kuju didn't know whose pet it was, but it was clearly very cranky. The young man had to use telepathy to order the monster to stop. Noticing that the dragon had frozen, his classmates decided to engage in restorative magic while they had the chance. Suddenly, the monster disappeared, and instead, someone's human figure appeared ahead. Hearing a familiar voice, Kuju realized that behind the creation of this dragon was Kashima Takaru, the same guy who was unhappy with his exam results. He noticed that his classmates had done well, so he decided to end it there. Kuju wondered if the jerk was an expert in fire magic. Suddenly, the big guy turned to the young man, suggesting that a serious test seemed too easy for him. Takaru mocked Kuja for not even being able to avoid the attack and called the guy incapable of anything. Kashima asked the others if they were too scared and suggested the hero say something, but the young man asked the bully to stop. Suddenly, Amari stepped in for her acquaintance, demanding that the big guy apologize to the whole class for the suffering he had caused. Kashima didn't even immediately realize who it was, but then he remembered that it was the same girl who had tried to stop him at the entrance ceremony. The big guy had advised her not to take on too much and reminded her that they were heroes whose main argument was strength. However, if the girl was so hurt by it, Kashima offered to make him apologize. He warned that he would be more than happy to do the same and burn Amari to the ground, but the girl wasn't intimidated by that. She threw a spell at the bully, causing him to back up. A smile shone on his face as Kashima had to admit that his classmate wasn't a scaredy cat. Kuju asked his buddy not to be led around, as the forces were clearly unequal, but Amari countered that there was no need to stop her. The girl bared her blade and prepared for battle. Amari was more belligerent than she seemed at first glance, but at the moment it looked like she was willingly backing herself into a corner. Felice ordered the guy not to interfere, as this girl was right. This was her fight. Kashima laughed again, feeling his own superiority. He told his opponent that she couldn't see the difference and offered to back off, but quickly changed his mind as that would be too boring. Suddenly, he spread his hands apart, allowing Amari to land the first blow. This confused her somewhat, but the girl gathered her thoughts and warned that she was coming if the big guy was okay with it. Unexpectedly, Amari activated her first stage 100 Buds ability, which not only impressed her classmates but also made Kashima's smile disappear. Koju realized that this was the inherent ability, a cheater skill obtained from the goddess. Judging from the reactions of the other heroes, the young man concluded that Amari's power was supernatural even to them. But suddenly, the girl was exhausted and dropped her sword to the ground after exhaling heavily. Felice regretfully concluded that Amari wouldn't be able to do that, and when asked why, she explained that her strength wasn't enough for such a powerful ability. She was overwhelmed. Kashima laughed again, stating that he had never before seen trash who couldn't even match his own skills. Nevertheless, the big guy admitted that he was scared. Suddenly, Lala ordered them to stop, informing them that she would not allow them to hurt the weak. The goddess immediately cried and rushed to Kuju, begging for protection from the scarecrow. The young man offered to finally stop all this nonsense, but Amari again objected that this was her fight. Kashima noticed that his opponent was trembling, and therefore declared that she was not fit for this academy. Nevertheless, even the bully suggested that she finish. Kuju intervened in the conversation, suggesting that they both stop talking and rejoice in successfully passing the test. This concludes the first part of this manga. There are about 20 more chapters ahead of you, if you want part 2, of course. If you've watched this video to the end, write in the comments the secret words, Demon Queen. That way I'll know you've watched it to the end. Well as let's put 1,000 likes for part 2, because I really tried hard. That's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you later, and bye-bye.